So now we're going to deal with George Grosz. And he's one of the principal artists associated with New Objectivity, along with Otto Dix and Max Beckmann, and was a member of the Berlin Dada group as well. Now, after observing the horrors of war as a soldier in World War I, Grosz focuses his art on being a social critique. He becomes deeply involved in the left-wing pacifist activities, and this is all happening after the war, publishing drawings in many satirical and critical periodicals, and participating in protests and social upheavals. His drawings and paintings from the Weimar era sharply criticize what Grosz viewed as the decay of German society, primarily due to the war. So usually you're going to see certain motifs, injured soldiers or people not quite who they appear to be, upper class people, but we're seeing a lot of ugliness behind, that sort of thing. Now, shortly before Hitler seizes power, Grosz moves to America to teach art and thus avoided Nazi persecution, which he would have suffered. All of these artists would have suffered because the Nazis want a war. They want the Germans to look favorably upon a war. So the work of the German New Objectivity artists will, of course, end up in the degenerate art shows by 1937. So before the war, Grosz is a Dada artist, but the war has him in such a state that he can't really find any humor in it. And so he moves to New Objectivity. He's also on the verge of a nervous breakdown when he's declared fit for service, which is going to be particularly key for this piece, fit for active service. Now, at the time, there is a shortage of soldiers. By the time we get to 1916, 1917, the Germans have run out of fresh bodies, as it were. Ludendorff, by the time we get to 1917, is pushing the idea of drafting women, of lowering the draft age to 16 and then possibly to 14 to bring in more people. And what they're also doing is they're going to be sending out injured soldiers back into the trenches. So, for example, you lose an arm, they're going to find some way to give you a prosthetic that allows you to hold a rifle. Or you're missing part of your face, they're going to fix that and go, you know what, it doesn't help for you to be at home. So get back out in the trenches. You're good to go. And that's what we're seeing here, this separation between the military and civilian life. In fact, he's satirizing the military's willingness to overlook personal well-being for the fatherland. So we see this separation of civilian and military life. And this is, of course, based on Grosz's experience. Now, as we dig into it, first of all, you look in the background. And what do you see? You see incredible factories working in the background. All that smoke, all that industry. Look at all that money that Germany's making, because, of course, they're making tanks and guns and armaments for the war. It's a positive thing from the government and military's perspective. In fact, this is what they're telling the German people during the war. Look at how great our economy is during World War I. And then inside, what we have is a doctor looking at what is clearly a skeleton sort of being held up, and he's using an ear trumpet to listen to the body, and then he says KV. KV is short for fit for active service in German. And this would have happened in front of these military boards with generals who have never served in the trenches. And they would get final say of, hey, is this person ready to go back in the trenches? And you have people with nervous breakdowns, people with shell shock, people with all sorts of things going on who are being told, nope, you're good, back to active service. And because it's conscription, they have to go. This is not a volunteer military at this point. But he'll take things one step further. He'll create Daum marries her pedantic automaton, George, in May. Sort of an odd piece. So this speaks to the injuries and casualties after the war. Now, I won't say most really, but pretty close to most men in Germany following the war will either be dead, injured, or seriously psychologically injured. So there I'm talking about trauma, shell shock, etc. You're seeing some things in the trenches that will cause some substantial problems. You're seeing a lot of injuries. In fact, a lot of the prosthetics that we get today, the technology that we get for prosthetics today, comes from Germany in World War I, because they're developing all of these new ideas. And we'll get into some of that later. And then, of course, we have people who are killed. So what we have here is Grosz looking at this marriage and looking at this man and going, he's no longer really a man, is he? I mean, all the prosthetics, he's probably just suffering through life, basically having PTSD. He's not really himself. He's not really a person anymore as such. And German society is simply interested in them having children because they need to develop a new military, and to do that you need children. You need kids so that you can train them to become soldiers. So we see her being set up to marry this automaton who clearly can't do anything for her in the meantime. So what it's doing is it's showing the injuries and casualties after the war. And to Grosz, the soldiers are not heroes. This is not today where, veterans are held in high esteem. Here, what Grosz is doing is saying these are victims, not heroes. What they did was wrong, but even worse, what we've done to them is wrong. So it's sort of getting away from the soldier as hero and looking at the soldier as victim here.